You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. The All Progressives Congress Special National Convention to elect its candidate for next year's presidential election kicked off yesterday with arrivals, and today, of course, is D-Day. Our correspondent, Ekene Undulue, who is the Eagle Square venue of the convention, you can see him there on the right side of your screen, is bringing us to speed right now with the events that are unfolding. Ekene, good morning, and what's up at the Eagle Square?
Good morning, Kingsley. It's a fine morning here at the Eagle Square. From what you can see here, all is set for the special national convention of the APC. Now, although we are not able to meet any of the committee members to tell us when we are expecting the arrival of the delegates, but everything seems to be in place. We got here, we could see the security men all over the place, the event planners, the media guys, the medical teams, all making final preparations ahead of the convention. And I must tell you that the security situation here is, like they say, very tight. On our way here, the road leading to the Eagle Square here has been cordoned off with diversions made for people to get to their various destinations. And anyone that does not have any business coming to this place will not be given access. So all is set, although the place is still sleeping. Eagle Square still looks sleepy, but we hope within the next few hours activities will start booming here.
All right, of course we're talking about the ruling party, and yesterday we heard about horse trading and a number of meetings held by the National Working Committee and of course the stakeholders of the party. From the look of things, what would you be? What's your assessment of how this convention will be handled, based on the fact that some persons in the party are talking about consensus candidates and others are saying that there will be election? From what you can see, do you see election taking place, or do you think there will be a consensus candidate after all?
Actually, Kirian, it's beginning to sound like a plot out of the Game of Thrones. You know, the issue of consensus candidates, the issue of northern governors rooting for a southern candidate and all that. The picture is not yet clear. There has been horse tradings, meetings going into the dead of the night, but we've not been able to come out with any clear picture on how things are going to unfold. We do not know if there is going to be a consensus candidate or if we are going to have 23 ballot boxes for the 23 aspirants here at the Eagle Square. But time will unfold all this.
Can I tell us, what is the schedule of activities for today, and what will most likely be the high point?
Okay, from the program that we've seen earlier, we're expecting to see the arrival of delegates from 10 a.m. this morning. So, and once they start coming in, every other thing we pick up. The national chairman will come in later in the day, and the election is going to, from the program we have, will come later around the evening period. But we do not know, since they are still having their meetings, and the committee members are not yet here, so that we will know if they've made some adjustments from the program they released earlier last week.
Well, I just wanted to also ask him, Ekene, you were at Eagle Square yesterday and you reported live from the same venue as they were setting up. Well, Eagle Square is at the heart, rather, of the three armed zones. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Federal Secretariats, phases 1, 2, and 3, are all located there. Were civil servants able to get into their offices yesterday? And what is likely to be the scenario today?
Okay, when we were coming in, we saw some people standing at the blockade where the policemen cordoned off the road. Their vehicles could not get access, but some are allowed, when they show their ID card, to get to their offices. The roads leading down here have been completely cut off. But I know the security, they do their checks at the entrances and they allow people with genuine businesses to get access to their workplaces. But the traffic around the secretariat has been building up, and I don't know what it will look like right now.
Well, okay, Kene, you are still there, and we would like to thank you for your instance. We'll keep in touch with you to, of course, follow events that will unfold at the Eagle Square with respect to the special national convention of the APC. Thank you very much indeed. Back here now in the studio, and of course, definitely we have
thank you.
Guests, who are going to be discussing this matter.
Well, that's right, Kieran. As we said at the beginning of this program, we took on this subject matter yesterday, and then all of a sudden, later in the day, there were all kinds of developments, Kieran. If you recall, with the National Working Committee, members of it disagreeing with the chairman, who had announced, according to them unilaterally, that there had been a consensus candidate tapped for next year's presidential election, and the northern governors insisting that power would shift and should shift to the south. Yesterday, we had the chairman of the Media and Publicity Subcommittee for the convention, the governor of Nasarawa State. We also had Professor Kabir Mato, as well as Ali Audu, who is the convener of the APC Rebirth Group. This morning, we also have some chieftains of the APC who are here with us in the studios. Let's welcome Osita Okechukwu, the Director General Voice of Nigeria, the member of the All Progressives Congress.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Pleasure to have you. Also here with us in the studios is Professor Muhammad Kuta Yahaya. Is the former secretary to the state government of Niger, and also on the subcommittee on media and publicity of the Special National Convention. Professor Yahaya, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Good morning.
All right, gentlemen, you're welcome to the program. Let's begin this conversation with Osita Okechukwu. Of course, the council has raised some points regarding the events of yesterday, and of course what has become the outcome, which is still unpredictable. Going into this convention, what have you been thinking? What's your thoughts with respect of what Nigerians are going to witness, perhaps before the end of today?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that first and foremost, we have designated centers for delegates to be accredited this morning. One of the centers is the International Conference Center and the old parade ground. From there, buses will haul the delegates to the Eagle Square, where later in the day, the election will start after the dignitaries and Mr. President and others have arrived at the venue and with their addresses. And also there will be manifesto of the aspirants. The aspirants will be in a position to address the delegates and by extension Nigerians to briefly tell the Nigerian people what they will offer us if they are elected as a presidential candidate and subsequently as president of Nigeria by May 29th, 2023. Your question is valid. There is a lot of contestation, there is a hype, and there is enormous contestation, and it's expected, because for us in APC, without being immodest, at the ruling party that controls 22 states out of 36 of the Federation, produced majority of members of the National and State Assemblies, we are brand A1. Anybody at the end of tomorrow that becomes the presidential candidate of the APC has about 60-70% chances of becoming the president of the country. So that's why you see contestation. And APC had also demonstrated that the Nigerian state, the unity of this country is founded on a strong foundation, as demonstrated by His Excellencies, especially those of the Northern Belt. I thank them immensely, because it's not very unusual for people to go by ethnic or regional inclination. almost all the governors of the northern states said there should be equity, there should be fairness, and good conscience. And luckily, Mr. President, in his usual candor as a patriot, also told them he agrees with them that he's not going to impose anybody. He did not anoint anybody. That all the candidates are qualified and valid members of the APC. Therefore, for Mr. President, whoever the delegates at the end of the voting, which will be done transparently, because we organized in such a manner that there won't be hiccups. They will be called state by state, state by state. You drop, they will give you a ballot paper, you sign whoever you want. It's a street ballot system. So we are not giving you a chance to show somebody what you wrote. So it's going to be transparent. And it had also hoisted the national unity flag when it is no more. In fact, what baffled me yesterday was that it's even some state governors from the south that I say, oh, we can go north. And I thank God. I said, since it's not north versus south, it means that the Nigerian state is highly blessed. So the contestation, one, is usual in a brand A. If it is a political stock exchange or market, we are brand A number one.
Okay. Well, Osita Okechukwu, thank you very much. I don't know whether you play the stock market regularly, but persons will tell you, or those who play the stock market, that sometimes you can have gyrations on the stock market on account of occurrences. Some persons are saying, Professor Kutaya, that the optics arising from the conflicting statements of yesterday would appear to be indicative of some war in the, if you like, the boardroom of the APC. What's playing out?
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank you for this opportunity and to also give some insightful directions. The chairman of the APC, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, we know him for what he represents. He's a man of character. He's a man that you cannot doubt his integrity and content of his conscience. Having been a former governor, a former minister, a former senator in the recent past, and a practicing and unarguably well-established entrepreneur, I know that Abdullahi Adamu is not frivolous. He is not a man that you can question his character. So therefore, if he comes out to say something in a political space of this nature, you should know that he knows what he's talking about. And I represent a party that you also appreciate how it came about in a consensus manner, because we are dealing with a situation in our country now that we have to work to change the narratives, whether we like it or not. This is the time. Yes, we know it's a democracy. You can always have your say, but the majority will always have its way. And consensus building is an agreement based on a group thinking in order to save our democratic system, whereby the issue of delegate has become synonymous to the highest bidder in our political space. In order to also arrest some of those things, the party in its wisdom have been engaging and consulting, and I'm sure by the end of today, certain narratives will come up that would have changed some of the positions of yesterday, because consultations continue even all through the night. And I'm sure, yes, in politics, what is very paramount is interest. Even the position that you say the governors put is not unexpected, because governors are also political animals, and they also have their interests. And if you know the antecedents in the near past, governors are always keen about the interests of who takes over from them, succession plans. They are very, very concerned. And also what happens after the elections. Maybe if you are seeking a second time, you want to continue, and then those who are exiting after a second time that compulsory they must leave, they think about what next. So, and when you talk about good practices and good examples, you talk about what have you demonstrated. in terms of equity, in terms of fairness that you are preaching. You can give a good example of Kaduna State in the near past. You talk about inclusiveness, you talk about diversity management. In the recent past, broadly the governor, brought a Muslim from southern part of Kaduna and went into election. And that's good. Now, another governor is coming from central Kaduna and nobody is challenging it. Nominated a candidate from central Kaduna and it stands. So when you want to, those who go for equity must come with what? Clean hands. So when you see agitation, you have to go to the background. What is the basis? Is it based on knowledge of what is happening? And that Abdullah Adamu came with a consensus position. Ahmed Lawan. Let's call a spade a spade. Who is Ahmed Lawan? Many people don't even know Ahmed Lawan because people don't even go to the background. That Ahmed Lawan is from minority by the tribe of Yobe State with a PhD from Cranford University in the UK, with a master's from Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, with a bachelor's degree from University of Maiduguri. He was one-time lecturer in the College of Education in Geshwa. He was one-time a lecturer at the University of Maiduguri, and he was even a secondary school teacher in Old Borno State. So if a man like this, you are talking about Nigeria, where you're talking about quality, you're talking about a man of character, a man that has been exposed all right, workings and trappings of national issues.
Professor, you've said it all. But we are not particularly campaigning for Lawan. But one critical issue that really formed part of this question is the controversy, if you like, between the chairman and the rest of the stakeholders. And these are key stakeholders, coming up to say that we have a consensus candidate when it was not discussed by the National Working Committee and, of course, the key stakeholders. Of course, it does appear that there is a crack somewhere in the hierarchy of the party. That's the thinking of many Nigerians. And let me come to you, Okechukwu. This clamor for power shift, you actually, endorsed the fact that the governors from the Northern Belt are saying that there should be a southern candidate for this particular election as far as APC is concerned. But why did it take so long, for that decision to be made? Or why was the party not firm ab initio, in terms of where the candidate of the party should come from, based on equity and fair play and justice and what have you?
Let's not walk on speculations. There are some few months ago, for them, Mr. President is not going, he's planning to extend his regime, and Mr. President said, please, by May 29th, 2023, inshallah, that will be going back to Dara. Law clear. He has signed the 2022 Electoral Act, which I dub vote rigging vaccine. Vaccine in the sense that they have made it crystal clear that the power has returned to the voters, by extension the people. That the presiding officer of the polling unit will electronically accredit voters. That is to say, your picture will be taken, your thumbprint to match what you are PVC. So if you stack 1 million PVC without 1 million people standing behind it, it's not going to work. And at the same polling unit, it's not a question of when the accreditation is finished, you go somewhere and come back to vote. No, you vote outrightly. And at the close of voting, the presiding officer endorses with the agents who want to, and the result is transmitted to INEC portal. What am I saying? The Electoral Act had taken care of all this. That today, whatever happens in the APC between now and the voting time, even if one person says it is not consensus, going by the same Electoral Act, And even the APC, our great party's constitution under Article 20, he said all these offices, convention, congresses will be democratically elected through direct, indirect primaries, and if consensus is decided, it must be affirmed wholly. And this Electoral Act 2022 is even more strict on the consensus. It says if one person says out of the 21, we now have 21, because His Excellency Badaru said he's no more running, he has joined his colleagues to support certain candidature. His Excellency Kenina Mani also said he's dropping out of the race. Giving one or two reasons. So out of the 21, Prof, His Excellency Ahmed Lawan, the President of the Senate, my own personal friend. If at the end of the day the vote favors him, the rest all will support him. But what we are saying, I have great respect for our national chairman of our great party, the distinguished Senator Abdullahi Adamu. But what we are saying is that the Nigerian state democracy had advanced. In the history of liberal democracy that run multi-party system, it comes to a time where to become dominant, with others making up the multi-party system. When it comes to that place, the contestation in APC and PDP will take place. Don't make it that anybody is trying to denigrate Ahmed Lawan or where he comes from. But the point we are saying is that Nigeria state is a fragile state. It's highly polarized. So anybody who is bringing healing balm to try to water down, unify the country. That's why when the APC, the PDP presidential candidate, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar was saying he's a unifier, I said you cannot be a unifier. Because one, you contributed in breaching the constitution of your own party that talks of rotation. APC did not even talk by constitution of rotation, but we said that for the unity of this country, for God's sake, you must first have a country before you become a president. I think we must, in all honesty, salute and comment highly the Northern governors. The good thing about cherry picking about Kaduna, it doesn't come in here, Prof. The good thing is that if you ask Mr. President, one of the governors who is close to him, Malam Nasir Rufai is one of them. President knows it's not against him. Same is His Excellency Atiku Bagudu. Same going down the line. You talk of Masari from Mr. President home state. You know Ganduje in Kano. So if collectively in their own wisdom, I'm not saying that our national chairman is wrong, because this is democracy, but if collectively, Governor Lalong, spanning from Nasarawa up to far north, all of them collectively said, for the interest of our dear country, that will go south. Let's leave it till evening. The delegates, let's also hear from them by their votes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Osita. Okay, Chukwu. Back again to Professor Kuta Yahaya.
Yes, sir.
Well, we've had a lot of stories since yesterday when there were reports of what transpired at the NWC. And there have been concerns as to adherence to process and procedure. For instance, the National Organizing Secretary of your party, that's Suleiman Argungu, did say that some of the members of the NWC rejected the idea of a consensus candidate announced by the party chairman. And some others have even gone ahead to question the very process of tapping one of the aspirants as a consensus candidate, because according to them, it flies against the provisions of Section 84 of the Electoral Act 2022. The provisions require that if there is a consensus candidate, there must be the written consent of all the other aspirants, indicating that they are stepping down for that named consensus candidate. This would appear not to have been done. What is the true situation?
Well, thank you very much. I think the overriding interest of the party is critical at this moment, and nobody can speak for the party when you are watching from outside. And as I said, the flying interest all over the place can create a lot of hype around certain statements. And if you go deep into the process, none of us can confirm exactly what transpired within the NWC. So we wait between that moment that you had that statement to now. In politics, many things could have happened. So you can't rule out the probability of consultations upon consultations, engagement of stakeholders. That is the beauty of democracy. You can have a position now, but in 5 minutes it could change because of superior arguments and convictions that may go along with it. So I am not losing sleep over the fact that this is the opinion of some people that was voiced out, which the media is using as a counterforce. And as we are now, is a media war that is more prevalent, but because of the credibility of NTA, you have a very good objective assessment of the situation. You're not going to take side because you're objective, and that is why you are probing those questions. In many spheres, some people have taken position and are using certain statements of other people to even counter the possibilities of APC having it right. And if you are in Abuja and you want to move around Abuja yesterday, the entire space was choked up because of movement of people. That is to tell you, APC is the leading party not only in this kind of situation we found ourselves, that whoever want to become the president of this country must of necessity know that yes, it's not a child's play. Okay. And that is the beauty of what is happening. So let's wait until the end when you will hear more superior arguments and positions of other people.
Well, of course, I know that even after the meeting yesterday, Kingsley, there will be more meetings. At the case, maybe.
Politics, I mean, you're a political scientist. Politics is sometimes a very slippery slope.
Exactly.
Because the people, they are chocolate.
Gentlemen, many Nigerians are of the view that the political class, has gradually made the issue of a primary, a business venture. It's a time when some persons would plot to make their money, especially delegates. And that's why it's also very interesting to note that many Nigerians fight to become delegates from their different states. As a matter of fact, for you to be picked up as a delegate from your state, it must be a kind of a compensation by your governor for supporting him, all through his regime. And of course, we had a convention here where people are speculating that money exchanged hands in terms of thousands of dollars, as the case may be. Are we dollarizing politics in Nigeria? And how will this not affect the APC eventually? If you go into voting, for this particular primary, have you put any mechanism, in place, to ensure that this election is not monetized? I'm talking to Dr. Shukru.
No, Mr. Sita, no, I couldn't pass the exam.
I don't know this.
So, to be honest with you, as I said, liberal democracy has its own foundation. Throughout the history of liberal democracy, money becomes very important. In America, for instance, money used for adverts and for phone calls, text messages is humongous. Coming back to Nigeria, the first elective office in Nigeria was in 1922. 3 legislative seats. The then Lord Lugard said for you to be eligible, either in cash or accessible property, you must be worth £100. The late Herbert Macaulay and other nationalists led a delegation to Lugard querying this position. Lugard said, Mr. Macaulay, luckily you studied in England. Did you observe how to come to the House of Commons? That society throughout history had said that those who want to preside should have some gravitas. Because if you leave some people that have no gravitas, or background check, or what they can hold on their own, either by property or children, that they might decide to burn the town. But that those who own the materials and the men of the city cannot, in their own wisdom, burn down the town. So it is not new. What is spent on the adversarial in advanced countries of the world, an endorsement, also not that they pay directly. I'm not saying that I'm trying to justify the monetization, but let nobody be afraid. It won't happen in the general election. If you are running for the presidency of the country, you have about 180,000 polling units. By last, they said about 176 or there about thousands, but let's say approximately 180. I don't know how much you will use to buy votes in 180 or 170,000 polling units. So what would matter is Nigerian state is looking at those who will advance the foundations. Mr. President committed about 80% of his resources to infrastructural development and the Buhari agrarian revolution. Nigerians want to know who will take this further so that more people will be lifted out of poverty and in hunger. So the people are watching. And luckily for us, we are running the street ballot system. Those who collected money even in the primaries from all the candidates voted secretly. And those who lost started chasing them.
And there were all kinds of videos on social media showing allegedly persons being wrestled to the ground.
But there is no balance, no refund after payment.
I asked a question, because the president had earlier said that the delegates should not give it to the highest bidder. He made that statement.
It's not going to happen.
So, all right, the question then arises, because if you recall, Kirian, in the making of the Electoral Act 2022, you had a lot of contestation with regard to the appropriate or advisable method for a party to choose its candidates. Direct, indirect, we always had in the electoral law, and then suddenly consensus came in. But the question was, how do you pick that consensus? And then the Electoral Act further goes, it's like subsection 12, to elaborate on the procedure. So if you were having this kind of contestation now, the question then arises, who is afraid of open competition? Let's look. Maybe assuming the two of you do not want to agree, who between you should be the candidate. All right. So stand before the delegates. Who is afraid of that, Prof?
Yes. The truth is that he spoke very well. Historical antecedent, very clear. But the reality of our nation today is monetization of electoral process. The law say you shouldn't do it, but we have seen open, cash and carry scenarios that we cannot continue like that. So the wisdom of those who are talking about consensus is to reduce this cash and carry business. Because when you agree on consensus and you engage and there is conviction and acceptance. Those who are coming for the highest, with the deep pocket to take everybody, will have to think twice. I can tell you confidently, so many people arrive Abuja 3-4 days as delegates before even the preparations, because to be a delegate is like manna from heaven has come for you, because of what has happened that we read about, what happened in some parties in the recent past. But the APC cannot continue to be like that. We must of necessity engender quality and standardization in leadership recruitment in our country now. The issue of the highest bidder, irrespective of your background, no matter what your background is immaterial as long as you have the cash to pay. And I think all the delegates this time around are not for sale. And indeed, the wisdom of the party insisting that we should have some consensus is to reduce this influence of monetization. And I'm sure, due to the ongoing consultations going on, and you should also know that the stakeholders in this country are not restricted to governors alone. We have members of the National Assembly. They are not a pushover. You have 109 senators and 306, and majority of them are from the APC ruling party. If they have their interests, they are going to have a coalition, then we should have a common ground where we can begin to look at these issues beyond monetization. And I'm very confident when the president made that pronouncement that he should not go for the highest bidder at all levels, he knew what he was talking about. How many people have looked at that at the lower levels of our recruitment, at local, state levels, even at National Assembly elections? We should look at that. The primaries should be considerate about looking at quality, merits, standard, experience, exposure of this candidate, and who can be presented. That what is very important, the party must present somebody that can win election.
Okay, let me ask Otto Kechukwu this. Just as my colleague asked who is afraid of election, I'm also asking who is interested in consensus. Because even when the governors of the northern region are keen for candidates from the southern part of the country, what is the method of selection? Are they also saying that consensus should be prioritized? Because from what we have heard, it does appear that consensus candidacy is prioritized as the first option, before the election. Now, also you're from the southern part of the country, and how can a consensus come to be from the southern part of the country? Is it a possibility based on what is on ground now?
Let me start by saying that without trying to be immodest, I'm one of those who have benefited from every tribe. So for me, I lived 28 years in Enugu State, and I lived 34 years in Abuja. So for some of us who are not actually bent on north-south, and as Prof is saying, consensus has its own qualities. Qualities in the sense that it makes everybody to be on the same page. It is also cheaper. But when it fails, we have the delegates to line up and vote. I think that's the issue. And on the issue of quality, Prof, I didn't go through the resume of all the contestants. But I know facially that somebody like Ogboniono had what they call in those days in the standard 6 distinction. He had distinction in secondary school, went to University of Lagos, made first class, with scholarship went to abroad, scholarship to PhD. Professor Yemi Oshibanjo, even those who might criticize him, can they say that he's not a legal senior lawyer? If you go down the line, Nigeria is blessed. So distinction of Another one is highly qualified. But there are other people who are also on that same pedigree. But what we're saying is that if consensus, who should be my first option? My first option in the sense that it unites the family. But if at the end of the day, as you said, after consultations it fails, the delegates will decide for us by early morning or latest tomorrow afternoon who becomes APC presidential candidate.
All right, Osita Okechukwu, thank you very much. Actually, I just need to make a slight correction. While I was prefacing my question to Professor Yahya, I was talking about the process and procedure for a party to indicate its consensus candidate. This correct section is 84 subsection 9. I was talking about 12. Subsection 12 relates to redress for any aspirant who feels aggrieved that the processes and procedures have not been complied with. So say, once again, the Electoral Act indicates in section 84 subsection 9 that for there to be a consensus candidate, there has to be the written consent of all the other aspirants. I read this first, then you face the delegates. So we'll see how it plays out for the All Progressives Congress later today and perhaps up to the wee hours of tomorrow. We'd like to thank our two guests who have been with us this morning. They are usually regulars on other issues on Good Morning Nigeria. Director General, Voice of Nigeria, Osita Okechukwu, thank you for being our guest this morning.
I appreciate it.
Professor Muhammad Kuta Yahya, former SSG in Niger State and also a member of the Subcommittee on Media and Publicity of the APC Special National Convention. Prof, delight having you this morning.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the NTA. We take
On NTA's network service, and we are, of course, getting into the second leg of our conversation this morning, which is on the INEC guidelines for 2023 election. And to begin our conversation, let's take this background report as put together by Abdul Salam Jabril.
Nigerians have begun counting down to the 2023 general elections, which is less than a year away, and electioneering activities is already dominating the polity. Across the length and breadth of the country, the popular discourse is on politics and the political process. While some political parties have already conducted and concluded their primaries and presented standard bearers for different political positions, others are still in the process. Before 2023, however, the Ekiti and Osun elections is scheduled to take place this year, and the electoral umpire, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), has released the regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections. The guidelines that supersede all other regulations were released by INEC during a special meeting of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security in Abuja to review security arrangement for the Ekiti State governorship election. The regulations and guidelines are issued pursuant to Section 149 of the Electoral Act 2022, and they supersede all other regulations and all guidelines on the conduct of elections issued by the Commission. INEC maintains that the regulations and guidelines shall remain in force until replaced by new regulations and guidelines or updated by way of revisions or supplementary regulations supported by decision extracts of INEC or an official gazette. The new regulations cover elections and arrangements for their conduct, accreditation and voting procedure at elections, and collation of election results and making returns. INEC also stresses that with the coming into force of the Electoral Act 2022, it had become necessary to review the Commission's regulations and guidelines to govern the conduct of elections. The Commission notes that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Electoral Act 2022, and the regulations and guidelines constituted the electoral legal framework. As Nigerians head to the polls in the upcoming Ekiti and Osun elections, as well as the general elections next year, what implications will the regulations and guidelines have on the elections? This and more guests on the program will be speaking to shortly.
Thank you, Abdul Salam Jibril, for that background. With us on the studios to discuss matters arising from the guidelines, let's welcome our regular analyst, Oluwole Osaze-Ozi, legal practitioner and election expert. Osaze-Ozi, delighted to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
It's a pleasure. Good morning.
Also here with us in the studios is Yusuf Maman Dantale, is National Secretary of the Inter-Party Advisory Council and also National Chairman of the Allied People's Movement. Maman Dantale, we're glad to have you.
All right, and also here with us, Hamza Lawal, co-convener, Not Too Young to Run Movement, and Chief Executive, Connected Development. It's a pleasure also to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, I guess we have.
Yeah, let's begin with Oluwole Osaze-Ozi. As subsidiary legislation, what's new in the guidelines for the conduct of next year's election, and what should therefore everyone who is a stakeholder watch out for?
Thank you very much. As your reporter did indicate, the guidelines are a product of the Electoral Act, which itself is a product of the Constitution. So the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and these guidelines form the tripod, the legal framework, which rests on those three basic footings that constitutes it. So once the Electoral Act was amended, there had to be consequential amendments to the guidelines so that there will be no conflict, because the guidelines, extant guidelines, were predicated on the Electoral Act of 2010 as amended. So with each amendment, you have to amend processes and procedures. You have to amend, fleshing up the legal regime, to fleshing up what the act cannot say everything. Just like Constitution cannot say everything, the Electoral Act puts more flesh, but the filling out will now have to be done by these regulations and guidelines. That's what INEC has done. Basically, it recognizes, for example, the important role that the technology will play in this new process. Recall that in the Electoral Act, the new Electoral Act of 2022, accreditation, voter accreditation is now done by beavers. Use the word card reader or any other technological device. INEC had already moved forward, had discarded the smart card reader and gone ahead to do the beavers, which is a more sophisticated and a more durable, a more flexible option than the card reader, but still a technologically based device which will be used for the accreditation, but not just for the accreditation, but also for transmission of results. So technology is the fulcrum of the electoral process, especially as regards transmission, accreditation, and transmission of results. Recall that with the Rivers Akwa Ibom cases, the issue of the validity, Supreme Court pronounced on the validity or otherwise of the card reader. I say, yes, it's a good thing, but the old law recognized ticking in the register, the manual process, as being what the legislature had done regarding accreditation. So if you want to prove accreditation in the court of law, it is by the ticks in the register. But with the amendment to the Electoral Act, it's now accreditation will be regarded as the end product of a technological or the end product of that technological device. So it's the extract of a technology device that will be. So the new regulations and guidelines recognizes this and gives detailed procedures about how you do accreditation using the beavers. And one of the new things is that if you are not accredited by the beavers to that technological device, then you will not be allowed to vote. So not only must you pass the facial or thumbprint impression of the beavers, your biometrics must be certified by the beavers, but also your name will be on the register and you bring your voter's card as well. If you don't pass those, and anywhere where the beavers is not, if it malfunctions, then another replacement will be found. If it cannot be found before 2:30 p.m. when poll closes, then it will be shifted to the next day. But you cannot have a thing that let's discard the beavers. So now that has been given legal backing by the Electoral Act and by these guidelines. So in case of Supreme Court interpreting the law as it was then will not hold sway this time around, because now this is the preeminent way and the only way really of saying who has been accredited, who has not been accredited. And that machine, the beavers, will also be used to transmit results both to the viewing portal for the whole world to see and also to the collation center. So you use a dual mode now. You'll use both the beavers and the manual paper EC8A to do that.
Well, many observers indeed appreciate the fact that INEC is, of course, they have upped the tempo in terms of acquisition of technology to see how they can help, especially when it comes to a nation that has not necessarily very good history when it comes to elections. All right, now we're hoping to have Ekiti and Osun elections, and one would also be tempted to ask if this new regulation and guidelines will be applied in both elections.
Oh, certainly, of course. The Electoral Act took effect the day it was passed or assented to by the president. In the same way, the day that the chairman of INEC signs off on the regulations, that's when it took effect. That's already taken effect. So every election to be conducted from that day that it was presented to the public, every election conducted, both by-elections, Ekiti, Osun, will be undertaken, and in addition to the 2023 elections, will be done using this new legal regime. So anything that goes contrary to it will be contrary to law, and there are consequences for that.
Okay, Oluwole Saziozi, you started out by explaining the legal regime that would govern the elections. I just want to restate that for the benefit of our viewers. What you said,
Yes.
that the conduct of the elections will be based on, as he said, a tripod: the Constitution of the Federal Republic, the Electoral Act 2022, and then the Election Guidelines 2022. That's correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. So let's bring in now the National Secretary of the Interparty Advisory Council, Yusuf Mama Dantale. The INEC announced that the guidelines are a product of consultations. Are parties, that's say IPAC, now, parties satisfied with the guidelines, or do you have any concerns?
Good morning, viewers. Good morning, Nigerians. I want to first start by commending INEC under the leadership of Professor Mahmoud Yakub. A lot of things has been done better, and I believe it should be done better. But the innovations are good, they are welcoming, and INEC doesn't do anything without consulting with the political parties, and we are very, very good with what is happening. First, the introduction of the beavers, as mentioned, is one thing that has really reduced multiple registration. Okay, so with what it has been experimented, and so far almost half of people that registered, okay, who the multiple registration has been fished out, and that has been streamlined. Then two, the introduction of the political parties. Now, you know, in 2019, you see political parties coming to sleep 2 or 3 days at the collation center, conference center. But as it stands today, political parties are trained on the use of how to upload the names of their candidates onto the platform. So that has taken off that one, the stress of those that upload these things, the INEC staff, the monotony of work, and then let me say inaccuracy of what the information that they upload on the system. Now parties do these things themselves. It has made that easy too. And three, there are so many things. I'm sorry, I'm not good at putting things in my head, but I would say in totality that the innovations that INEC has brought up in the regulation today, they are very good and welcoming. We don't have problems for now. Okay. Well, Hamza, you just heard that INEC consults extensively before taking decisions that will impact on the nation. I wonder whether your movement was also consulted. So, how do you view, these regulations and guidelines? How would it impact on youth participation in governance, especially elective positions?
Well, thank you. It's an exciting innovation. We all know that my generation is a technology mobile generation, and with the introduction of BVAS, one, it entails electoral integrity, it helps curb violence and any malpractices. We know that in 2015 and 2019 there was the incident form. So when the card readers were failing, electoral officers at the polling unit would have you fill incident form. And using this, corrupt politicians would use this process to manipulate the electoral system. But with BVAS, there's nothing like incident form. it's really exciting that as you cast your ballot electronically, results will be transmitted. So what this means is if the vote is much more than the accredited voters, that means that election will be cancelled. So for us, it's really exciting. And just to say that, yes, INEC consults with civil society, including my organization and our various groups, quarterly. So we sit down with, the chairman of INEC and all the electoral commissioner. We have deliberation. Yes, we disagree in some cases, but we've had that very exciting and collaborative relationship. I'm also excited with the fact that, now voters are not allowed to take their mobile device or any camera device to the polling booths. And what this means is we probably can use this to curb vote buying and vote selling. It is really sad that, elections have now become more transactional with monies exchanging hands. I would say that this is an indictment to our anti-corruption agency, who should partner strongly with INEC, and I mean the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission. Should partner with INEC so we can sustain this momentum. Yes, we've had argument from other activists saying that it's an infringement of their right, but just 2 minutes without using your phone, because we've seen practically on the field where corrupt party agents would ask people to show them their ballot paper before they put it in the box after casting their vote, so that they would use it to transact and collect a stipend, on the sideline. While some other corrupt party agent would say, take a picture and use this picture as an evidence to come and collect, a stipend for voting for our party. But with this on the guideline, it means that we can use, when we enforce it, we can curb vote buying and vote selling during election nearing period, and it's really exciting.
And Kisley, he said something, that his generation is a technology mobile generation. I hope they will not also apply that negatively in terms of manipulating the hacking to the system.
No, so again, when you look at the beavers and our engagement with the INEC chairman and particularly the director of ICT, the technology have very solid firewall. So it's not a technology that you can easily hack or manipulate. There are different layers of firewall and security architecture that protect, the electoral integrity and the processes and the system itself. And yes, my generation is a solution-driven generation. We're not the problem. We're not the problem. We're solution-driven, and we look at the positive aspect of technology and use it positively. And with this, we're curbing also ballot box snatching. So if you're a corrupt politician that always leverage on the fact that a lot of young people are unemployed, if you snatch the ballots, the results have been transmitted automatically. So the problem is not my generation. We use technology positively. Let's talk to the corrupt politicians.
Okay, Hamzat, thank you very much. Gentlemen, Kieran, my colleague on set this morning, it's particularly significant that voters who are about to cast their ballot will now be required not to go in with their smartphones where you have cameras and therefore you could take, because we have seen incidents in this so-called see and buy. We have seen it in recent past where after casting after thumbprinting the ballot paper, they will show it on the side to an agent to say, you see, I got that. And then you go, as Hamza said, to collect something. In this case, when people did that was no longer working. They were now taking snapshots of the ballot papers, which would be quite useful. But I hope that there could also be a mechanism for temporary custody of the phones. In other words, there has to be maybe a basket placed there to say, look, drop your phone inside the basket before you go to the polling booth, so that it should be a basket that is perforated. Yeah, but that's why it's a basket anyway, perforated, and everybody knows that you have actually dropped your phone in there, and then you go in there, and then you cast your ballot and you come back. But there could be practical challenges. You are a veteran of many cycles of elections in this country, and since we've been grappling with card readers straight on now to beavers, in the Anambra elections last year, I think there were some issues with beavers. I wouldn't know whether they have been able to rectify them. But the more practical challenge, and you may wish to speak in greater detail to this, is that in some parts of the country, And some of your officers, permanent or relatively permanent and ad hoc staff, have come under threats and coercion to proceed with the election. Namely, a potential voter is it cannot be accredited because there is no verification of that potential voter, and there's not, because some of them come with voters cards that are not theirs, and then they come under threat to say, look, let this person go ahead, let's let the person vote. How do we obviate that with the advent now of the beavers? Is the beavers likely to be a magic wand to cure this affliction that occurs in some parts of the country?
Thank you very much. You've touched on a very important, somewhat sensitive issue. That issue of communal collusion, where blackmail, if you want, where they put so much pressure on the young staff who undertake electoral duties, and such that, especially in remote areas where you hardly find security agents to give the necessary protection, and where you find them, they may not be armed in polling units, and there might not be any armed patrol units anywhere nearby. So life is very important, and they are trained to do everything possible to mediate and to protect themselves as much as best as they can. But the good thing about that, and I think there's a lot of education to be done to such communities, is that, look, the results will not count, even if you compel them. First of all, if the official does it voluntarily, then the commission in the new guidance said that amounts to dereliction of duty. What that means basically is that when there's a dereliction of duty, you can be prosecuted. It now elevates it into a criminal offense. You can be prosecuted and jailed for dereliction of duty. It's one of the few instances in a Nigerian criminal penal jurisprudence where dereliction, act of omission or commission, which ordinarily would be termed negligence, now has been criminalized. So if you do it voluntarily, then that. But if you knowingly do it, but if you're compelled to do certain things, once you go to an area of safety, your duty is to report it. So see what happened. Because in any case, at the collation center, the collation officer is bound to look at the results and look at the total number of accredited voters. So where the total number of ballots cast or used exceeds the total number of accredited voters, end of matter, that will not be taken. If there's no download from the beavers to show the, and that's the important thing, where the commission is not going to look at the ticks and register, it's going to look at the total number of as ascertained from the beavers. So beavers print out, how many people do you have? They look at it, how many people do you have? Only 100 people accredited. So how come we have 200 ballots used? Automatically that result is null and void. I will not be taken into consideration in dealing with the final result. So the collation officer at that level, if the first level is still not too safe, then the second level of collation, it will be dealt with. So it will be a foolhardy venture for any community or group of people to try and threaten, compel the people to bypass the beavers. As I said, if the official does so voluntarily, then it's dereliction of duty and he can be prosecuted, he can go to jail. If it's compelled to do so, he's duty bound to report it. And if he reports it and there's an investigation by the collation officer, I does see that there's a discrepancy. The first duty is to try and reconcile the discrepancy. But when there's such a discrepancy and it cannot be reconciled, end of matter, it will be discarded. Null and void for that polling unit. So
okay, so to some reasonable extent, the integrity of the election will rely very seriously on the integrity of the INEC staff, be it permanent staff or the ad hoc staff, because after said and done, somebody has to upload results from different polling booths. Let me ask you this, Yusuf Maman Dantale. Technology comes with its own faults here and there. There are situations where the most trusted devices fail you at the point of need, and honestly, Nigerians will be expecting to have that with the introduction of beavers, and of course, the election that will take place in the whole part of the country, simultaneously. Certainly, we are going to have such experiences, in terms of failure or dysfunctionality of some of the devices. How would the political parties react to a situation where perhaps we have so many malfunctioning devices during the election. Of course, society has told us that if that happens in certain polling booths, election could be postponed to the next day, since there is no other form that will correct any anomaly for registered voter to vote if the the PVAS did not allow that.
I want to say that political parties, and in particular myself, we are very confident about these innovations. What we tend to achieve with this innovation, what INEC has done, I think in this election, 2023 election, we are going to have less litigation over what we have in the past. First, I was able to say so many things in my first
you have the floor.
Submission. Well, the electronic transmission of result will save us so many things. What it means is that there will be provision for you to compare what you have manually and what you have electronically, and that will now reduce discrepancy in the results, and that will equally reduce it will by extension reduce what we'll have maybe as evidence before the tribunals. It will save the tribunals. Number two, in uploading, in the past, I was a victim in 2019. The age of my deputy, I was running election in Kogi State, and the age of my deputy was below the age of the age limit set by the Constitution. And at the end of the day, we have to go to court to challenge INEC decision for disqualifying my candidacy before we got judgment. But what INEC has introduced today, there won't even be provision for you to upload that age. The moment you don't have the set age as accepted by the Constitution, it will not even go. So that again has reduced another litigation. And
can you just describe for us again your experience?
If today,
your experience in 2019 with
in 2019, the age of my deputy, I was running for governorship in Kogi State, and then the age of my deputy was a year below the set age by the Constitution. So, and INEC on the basis of that wrote me that there was no valid nomination in the first place. So that I cannot contest. But I went to court to challenge the decision, and I got judgment 2 days before election that INEC doesn't have the powers to qualify or disqualify whatever the political party submit. But now it has changed. But today, you do not, the software that INEC have in the course of uploading this age, you cannot even upload the age that is below the age limit for you to, the system will not accept it. So that will give you ample time for you to correct whatever mistake that has been done in the course of, so you can replace the age of your running mate. So that again has reduced litigation.
That's an interesting point.
Yes.
Hamzat, I wouldn't know whether you have some legal background, and Oluwalozi. I was just wondering, Kira, let's clarify this whole issue of age. Is it your age? Because if you say there's a software that can accept or reject, is it your age as at the time you are filing your nomination, or your age as at the time you will be contesting the election? It's like those who write UTME, that is the matriculation examination. You say that as at the time of admission, if assuming there was no ASU strike, by September this year, you should be 16 years of age. I mean, you could be 15 years and, this is June now, 15 years and 9 months, assuming you're writing the JAMB, last month now, when you wrote JAMB, you were 15 years and 8 months. By September, you will be 16 years. And then you'll be qualified for admission. Well, what do we know about this age requirement? I mean, assuming I don't meet the threshold at the time I'm uploading my data, but at the time of the election I would have met the threshold. What happens?
I want you to look at this. The whole thing is a process, and then the age limit we're talking about is the period of nomination, and not the period you are contesting election. So, and I think INEC has tried. We should commend them. Yes, I want to say it, because if today you want to contest election, and then your age is not up to that, I think the best thing for you to do, the process will not reverse itself, or because you will be maybe qualified the next month or the next year. So it's a continuous process. If you can't contest now, you can contest the next time. But I don't think there should be provision for anybody. There should be a leeway for anybody to maybe reapply, because the moment you're out of this process, or you have certified this process, it is not possible, or it is difficult for to start reversing it because of one exceptional case. I think the person is normally we should wait for the next time that you're praying.
All right, so additional points you have?
Okay, yes. I have a question here, or questions as the case may be, which I had wanted you to really answer, but we would like our friend also to start the answer, and that has to do with partly the question I asked to you. If, since BVAS is mandatory, where it fails to accept a voter, what is the right channel for such a voter, or voters as the case may be? It may not necessarily be the voters in a particular polling unit, which may attract postponing the election. Some individuals whose may have issues. And again, number 48 mandates the commission to transmit election results electronically. Where that fails, what happens? Especially where we may have little or no network. How would that result be transmitted, knowing, of course, the terrain of Nigeria? In some parts of the country, there are no networks. Hamzat.
Oh, so first for the BVAS, and I think here there's an opportunity. One, to increase infrastructure, particularly information and communication technology infrastructure in very remote communities. And, you know, we're always advocating for integration and inclusion. And I believe that with BVAS integration and technology integration, probably there will be more increased investment. But in a case where in a certain polling unit, the BVAS does not have network to transmit results, you know, they will still transport all the electoral materials. So in any case where there is network, automatically the system would upload it, to the server and to the situation room of INEC. So yes, in some cases there might be downtime, but that does not take the fact that once there is uptime and there is network, it will automatically upload, because the BVAS have a system where they save data on the BVAS. So as soon as there is network, it can upload, on the system itself.
Well, Hamzat, very briefly, I would like you to also weigh in on what Osaze appropriately described as communal collusion in bypassing the BVAS, because there are instances where you have had multiple registrations. Sometimes persons just say, look, this person has not been verified, and so there's good accreditation by BVAS. No problem, go on, you electoral officer, do this. The officer comes under threat, and as we have seen, sometimes some of them have lost their lives. But what happens in those instances? How can we avoid such communal collusion in seeking to bypass BVAS and make collation a bit problematic?
So, before now, practically, yes, you can put pressure on the electoral officer and have him to bypass the process of the system. But with BVAS, it's quite straightforward. Yes, and I believe there is still ample time to sensitize and educate people. And this is where civil society that have built integrity and also built community engagement with those grassroots communities. And this is where also sometimes election observers, even if their role is to observe, they can also step in and try to educate, the people involved at that instances. I know that as we go into 2023, we have time to educate, to inform, and transfer knowledge, so people are more sensitized and aware. But I believe that the role of traditional and religious institution would go far, because I've actually experienced this case, and it was the traditional leader who was putting a lot of pressure, on the electoral official on the field. So I believe if INEC and civil society work closely with traditional and religious institution, and where they can add their mouth when there is an incident and say, no, if you're not being accredited by BVAS and the system is not recognizing you, then you have to be patient and understand that probably there was something wrong during your registration. But I'm aware that INEC continue to clean up the voter register. So even if you have, as of today, there is no duplicate register. They continue to clean the data, and upload it and review it at election.
Hamza,
Let us also come on this issue of some persons not being accepted by the beavers or acquainted by the beavers to vote on a particular polling booth.
Well, I think there is more to say on what.
Very quickly, we're running out of time.
Yeah. You were talking about a situation where people are the electoral, the officers, INEC officers, will be coaxed into ensuring that some persons are allowed to vote.
Yes, that's what communal collusion.
There must be accreditation before you can vote. So, and the beavers will automatically eliminate the issue where votes cast will be more than the accreditation.
That's why. So if that happens, will the votes from that unit be annulled, or there's some arithmetic that goes into a certain time?
The vote must be in tandem with the accreditation.
Where the vote is not in tandem with the number of accredited voters, what happens?
The system automatically eliminates that.
That's part of the reason why
should be annulled.
And that's part of the reason why I asked him to talk about the issue of beavers not accrediting someone who registered properly. So what does that person do eventually on a voting day?
Regrettably, there isn't much you can do. I think I made allusion to that when I first the opening question, is that the regulations are provided that where that happens, then the person will not be allowed to vote. So not only must be accredited by beavers, you must pass that beavers test. Okay. Otherwise, you'll not be allowed to vote. And they should record it that you have not been allowed to vote because of that. And then you are requested, I don't think that's putting a burden on you, to report to the commission that this has happened, so that it can be cured in future elections.
Okay, gentlemen, it's that we conclude this conversation.
Yeah, very interesting conversation. In addition to the guidelines, there's some very important announcement that INEC made, that it may not store sensitive election materials
with the
central bank, and that's it's a very significant step. It's a confident and I will give you for that. Obviously, I want
to discuss that. And I wonder where they're going to take those.
Central bank. You know that what INEC does now, that
we actually have no time, to delve into that, right? So at this point, we'd like to appreciate the three of you for being here this morning. Oluwole Osaze-Uzi, legal practitioner and election expert. We thank you again for being here, as always. Yusuf Maman Dantale, National Secretary, IPAC, and National Chairman, Allied People's Movement. It's a pleasure talking to you this morning. Hamzat Lawal, co-convener, Not Too Young to Run Movement, and Chief Executive, Connected Development. It's been wonderful talking to you this morning. Thank you for having Nigeria. Thank you, indeed.
All right, that's our program for today. As always, we appreciate your tuning in. Join us tomorrow for another edition of the program, same time, 7 in the morning. I'm Kingsley.
And I'm Kiwin. Have a great day.